Good morning, 8th grade. So today what we're going to be doing is using the same passage from yesterday to answer these multiple choice questions. And our big thing this week is annotation, annotating the questions and annotating the passage. So it's really important that you're going back to the passage every time to find your answer. Sometimes our questions are going to give us a place to look, and sometimes we just kind of have to go back into the passage and try and find the best places. So one of the big things that I'm going to ask that you do is when you're going back to your passage, you're telling me where you found your answers to the questions. So you're writing the question number next to the paragraph that you're using. So let's do an example. What is the meaning of the word hysteria as it is used in paragraph 3? So right now I know that I'm going to paragraph 3. This is telling me where I need to look. So that's giving me an answer almost right away. Before I look at my options, I want to go back to paragraph 3. And I want to reread this and think about the word hysteria with and what it means. So the subway ride was a quiet time for reflection with very few early commuters. I got off as if floating on air, tightening my hijab or veil around the back of my head. It had to be hysteria, this feeling within of clean joy one minute and terrible sorrow the next. A storm was raging up and down within me as I walked westward from Canal to West Street. I felt a restless quest to outrun my fate, grind it beneath my feet. So I'm going to write next to this paragraph, questions 1, and 2, because that's where I'm finding my answers to question number 1 and 2, part A and part B. So this word is hysteria. And I want you guys to think about what is it talking about when it says hysteria? This feeling within of clean joy one minute and terrible sorrow the next. A storm was raging up and down within me as I walked westward from Canal to West Street. And then look at our answers. Is she talking about extreme anger, uncontrollable emotion, a light feeling, slight anxiety? Go back into the passage if you need again to say, okay, I know that I'm looking for one of these answers. Do I see her feeling anger, uncontrollable emotion, a light feeling, or slight anxiety? Once you've chosen your answer, you're going to your part B and connecting each of these quotes to the answer that you chose. Does this prove whatever your answer is? You should go back again and look for each of these pieces of evidence. The subway ride was a quiet time, as if floating on air. A storm was raging up and down within me, a quest to outrun my fate. You should go back and say, how did I figure out what hysteria meant? Which of these pieces of evidence is showing me that? So this is my first piece, second piece, oops, I just did something with that. The storm was raging up and down within me, and I felt a restless quest. So which of those pieces of evidence helped you figure out what hysteria meant? Now we're going to go back to our question number 3. In the passage, the narrator comes to a decision at the end of the passage. Which statement best describes her realization? So we're looking at the end of the passage. We're looking for the decision that she makes. This should actually say which best describes her decision. So we want to find out, what decision does the narrator make? Now, what is a decision? A decision is going to be like a choice of action or a choice to do something. She's making a decision. She's either choosing between two things or she's choosing to do something. And we want to think about, what does she decide at the end of the passage? So right now it's telling me I have to go to the end of the passage. So I should come down and I would read the last 2 paragraphs to find my answer. The wind tore the veil from my hand, making my task easier. I grasped the cold railing with one hand and swatted at the fleeting piece of my life with the other as the wind picked up speed. It teasingly brought the veil closer to my face. I could have grabbed it. The veil sailed down toward the depths, its grave. So here's something I could have grabbed it. That's a decision she makes not to. I did not feel a sense of betrayal as I walked away from the pier, letting the wind dance with my hair for the first time. I pulled a few strands out of my eyes and looked back. The sun had just started to peek at the horizon, bleeding its crimson hue. It was a matter of perspective. To an onlooker, I had removed my veil, but from where I stood, I had merely shifted it from my head to my heart. So again, this decision to shift something from her head to her heart. I'm going to write in my margin that I'm answering question number 3 and 4. Here. Because this is where I'm finding my answers for this part A and part B. Going back to my questions, what decision is our narrator making at the end? A, she abandons her faith to find happiness. B, she will not raise her child as a Muslim. C, she betrays herself and her religion. D, she will hide her true self on the inside. So I want you to go back and look, what is it that she's deciding to do when she's throwing this veil into the water? Once you've decided on your answer, you need to look for your evidence that will support it. Remember that you want to tie the evidence to what you chose as the answer. So if it does not support your choice in part A, then it's not going to be the correct answer. So how did you decide? Go back, look at the paragraph, and you underline what helped you decide on your answer for your part A. Does that match any of the part B evidence? If not, look for evidence around that might make sense. For number 5 and 6, which of the following sentences shows a difference between the beginning and ending of the passage? So again, this is telling us where to go to find our answer. We're looking at the beginning of the passage and we're looking at the end of the passage. And we're looking for what is different about the way the passage starts and the way the passage ends. So where should I go? The beginning and the end. I would consider the first 3 paragraphs the beginning of the passage. So I'm labeling that I'm finding this for question number 5 and 6. I'm finding it in the first 3 paragraphs, and I'm finding it in the last 3 paragraphs. Because I'm looking for a difference between the way the beginning and the end of the passage is. So I need to reread the beginning and the end. How does the passage start? I wanted to take this journey myself, unseen, unchallenged. The air outside was thick. It comforted me, tingled the soles of my feet. The feeling of heaviness that had been lingering for days was gone. I would have danced had I not been on a mission. I delighted in how clean my insides felt, like they had just been laundered and wrung dry. Soapy smells suspended in air. Invisible molecules tickled my nostrils, and I sneezed at the thought. I stopped by a toy store. Its shutters down, occupants fast asleep. As I pressed my nose against the window, I marveled at the simple joys of childhood. My breath came in short waves and misted the window, creating tiny smoky bubbles of all sizes and shapes. The subway ride was a quiet time for reflection with very few early commuters. I got off as if floating on air, tightening my hijab or veil around the back of my head. It had to be hysteria, this feeling within of clean joy one moment and terrible sorrow the next. A storm was raging down within me, and I walked westward from Canal to West Street. I felt a restless quest to outrun my fate, grind it beneath my feet. I'm going to go back to my answers, and it tells me the story begins with, the story begins with, the story begins with, the story begins with. So I can right away get rid of any that is not true about how the story begins. The story begins with an internal conflict. The story begins with an internal conflict. The story begins with the character's thoughts.